I'd like to welcome you guys to the Prospect New York State video cast. We are joined here tonight by special guests. We've got our offensive line coaches for the Power 100 Showcase. We've got two returners from the Power 50, Adam Terry and Mike Weimer, and we've got a new signee from the Long Island, the Strong Island, Coach Greg Laurie. Are we saying that right, Coach?
Yeah. Greg Laurie.
Let's start off by letting you guys tell the group, tell the audience about your backgrounds. Greg, why don't we start with you?
Okay. Well, I've been coaching between high school and college football for about 32, 33 years. I've kind of lost track. I started off at Hofstra University down here on Long Island back when they had football at the school. Left there, went back to high school, and also coached at Nassau Community College down here on Long Island, ASA College in Brooklyn, and currently I'm at Station North High School out here on Long Island as the assistant head coach and offensive coordinator.
That's awesome, Coach.
Well, I grew up in Lyons, New York, under the leadership of Randy Wadhams, John Lawson, Dominic Monticelli. A good friend of mine, you were there. Lucky enough to go to St. John Fisher and learn from outstanding line coaches and Jim Scacchetti and Bud Sims. Luckily, a job right outside of being a player at Aquinas. I've been lucky to have great experiences wherever I've coached. Sean was a huge influence on me. Tony Bianchi, Rob DeTore, and Chris Battaglia have been huge influences on helping me as a coach. I was there for 4 years coaching JV football, got an opportunity to be a varsity line coach with Steve Leon at Brighton High School, and I've been there for 8 years.
That's and Adam.
Grew up in upstate New York, Section 2, went to Queensbury High School. Played under the tutelage of John Arian, who actually kind of catapulted my career. We were one of the worst teams in New York State history, and then we go to back-to-back state finals in 97 and 98, and that's what kind of gave me the exposure. From there, 27 offers, decided to go to Syracuse, stay home, play for Coach Paul Pasqualoni, and then George DeLeon was my offensive line coach. So George is well known throughout the universe as an offensive line guy. So from there, junior year, all Big East, and then honorable mention All-American. Senior year, all Big East, and then was a second-round draft pick by the Baltimore Ravens, 64th overall, and spent 7 years in the NFL with various O-line coaches and various head coaches. My first tour was 5 years in Baltimore. Played under two great coaches there. And then I did a AFC South tour in the last 14 months of my career. So have had the ability to see a lot and definitely listen to a lot of fantastic coaches. And then my time at Baltimore was capped off early in my career, backing up a Hall of Famer in Jonathan Ogden. And then later on in my career, being behind or playing with Willie Anderson. And then, to see a guy like Marshall Yanda, who should be a Hall of Famer, for his ballot kind of guy, as one of my good friends. So football afforded me a lot of opportunity and allowed me to cross a lot of paths with great men and great football minds.
So, guys, I'd like to formally welcome y'all. Thank you so much for being here with us. I know you all get back to this great state, into this game in your own way. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Having worked and coached Coach Weimer, having worked with Adam last year at the showcase, and connecting with Coach Laurie from Long Island, every one of you guys has reached out to me sort of behind the scenes since this all started in your own way. And you've all been passionate about really trying to do the hard work, behind the scenes, and really do the work that matters, not just the flashy stuff. So I just to you guys, welcome officially, and so going back to Coach Laurie. So Coach Laurie and I have been talking for on and off, back and forth. We actually finally got the chance to meet at the Coaches Association clinic, which was outstanding, and really humble guy, working hard. We're excited to have you, sort of step into the showcase coaching piece because Coach Weimer work and Coach Terry, they all bring their own sort of, breadth of expertise, obviously, to the game, but you're all New Yorkers. And, not that you couldn't be a great coach without being that, but there's to be said for, guys that come back to their home state and I can't thank you enough. I think it's just exciting to get you guys together again. Student athletes are bombarded right now on social media and in general. It's sort of a paradox because it happens to a point, but it can be dangerous, right? It can be people can prey on kids and one thing that I'm a big believer in is that you educate kids and you tell them the truth as much. You've got to tell them the truth always. You don't need to over. You certainly don't want to be overly. You want to be very honest with prospects. And I guess I'd like to start with back to you, Greg. Is you guys get a chance to talk about what does it mean to stand out as a prospect, given all the noise that's out there? What can a prospect do both academically and also maybe sports performance wise, Greg, in your mind, to stand out?
Okay. Well, it's funny you said that because I just had a recruiting meeting with our parents and players last night, and in that I also handle all the recruiting for our school. So in that, I basically what I spoke to the guys about was first and foremost, it's your academics. I've been doing this a long time on both sides, either a college recruiter coming into a high school or as a high school coach trying to get my guys to find the right place. And the first question I always ask, and everybody always asks, is what are their academics like? So I always preach to them about making sure we're taking care of things in the classroom and being a good student and a good community member in the school. The second thing that I'm big on is I like my guys, when they find a coach or a school that they're interested in, to make a phone call. It's kind of a little old school. I know right now, big thing is the Twitter, which we speak about, and building your platform on Twitter and how to handle yourself there. But just had a conversation with a young man today, thinking he might not want to go to a school or that school might not be the right fit for him. I said, then please do me a favor, call the coach, speak with him, and tell him, that you've decided this isn't the right fit for you and that you're going to look in other places. But make a phone call. Don't text them. Don't do anything. Learn how to present yourself in the proper way to the college coaches. Learn how to speak with people. I'm a big believer in that. And then, lastly, as far as, I always preach to the guys, take advantage of every opportunity you have to make yourself better, either going to a camp or, going to an individual. Like we use a lot of places where we take our kids to speed training and things like that. We do a lot of mobility training. We don't have the facilities at our school to do that. So we found somebody here on the island that would work with us, and we try to give them as many opportunities for exposure as possible.
That's awesome. Coach Weimer, what about you?
Well, building off that, to me it's huge if a student athlete is willing to be a positive influence in the school as a whole, in the school community. Be a person that's going to go to multiple sporting events, support other programs. Be showing yourself there really enables the school culture in general to grow. In the classroom itself, be inclusive to peers that aren't athletes. Open up yourself to those conversations and being a leader within the classroom itself. It's an educator. It means a lot to me, as I'm a teacher in Rochester. It means a lot to me when students come to me for support on anything.
Yep.
Building relationships. Life is about building relationships, positive relationships. And if student athletes are able to show that and grow that as an adolescent, and then finally into adulthood or in college, it goes a long way. Athletically, for me, being flexible is huge in developing strength. So constantly working on the basic fundamentals. Like when I have line practices throughout the winter, throughout the spring, we always start out with agility drills, flexibility drills, getting their knees and their ankles to flex as much as possible to build on abilities.
So, I'm going to move on to Adam here, but before I do, the first time I met Adam was actually, I believe, at one of my Section 5 state qualifier games back when I was a young head coach at Red Jacket, and showed up, and he was there to watch the game, and I saw him at other games as well. I mean, he was, after he was out of the league, he immediately immersed himself into high school football. And we were a smaller school at the time, and that stood out to me right out of the gate. That here's a guy who just played in the NFL, and here he is at my, Class D, state qualifier game. I'll never forget that because super humble, and he's obviously involved with powertrain. And since that time, I've sent multiple athletes to him, and I'm sure we're going to get more involved in that. But what to you in your mind that helps a prospect stand out in 2020?
It's being a good dude. Being in a landscape where I do the radio for Syracuse University and being around the football team, you don't want bad guys walking on the plane or walking onto the practice field because, that's going to set practice back. When I say that, it's be well-rounded.
Yeah.
I always tell the kids that come through Powertrain or anybody that asks me for advice, I want you to turn down Harvard, Dartmouth, Princeton to go to Alabama, right? Having a high GPA gets you in and checks a few boxes because of the way that the landscape of college football is now with, everybody has to have a certain GPA or else you get scholarships taken away. And I know that's for some schools not a big deal, but for others it is. So when I look at that, it's just like I'm just reiterating what everybody else said. Be a guy that is helping the woman across the street and picking up some stuff, and that's how I try to get my two boys to operate as men, as they go up through. But it's also look, if I didn't do it that way when I was growing up, the fear of God of my mother would have kind of set in. So she was an old farm girl, and I was more scared of mom than I was scared of dad.
You guys all touched on something that's free, right? You can't buy character, and you can't buy some of the behaviors and the characteristics you guys all touched upon. Coach Lori's talked about make that phone call. Coach Weimer's talking about support your school. And Adam's talking about things that you can't buy, and being a good dude. Those are things that they don't cost anything. And yet the college recruiter, as all you guys are alluding to, they're looking for the kinds of guys you guys are talking about. And I would say one of the things I look forward to for a prospect to stand out is, and it's hard to do, but a prospect that's mature and that really takes things serious in high school enough to be able to have those conversations, look you in the eye, shake hands, and be able to carry on, a conversation. I really look for that because there's so many different interactions that are going to take place during the recruiting process. It seems the really mature athletes just stand out. They stand out in the weight room. They stand out in the classroom. They stand out with their teachers and at home and so on and so forth. And it's not easy because you're surrounded by other teenagers that don't have the same goals that you have. So, and I had this conversation with a young man today at Fairport, and I said, look, some of the crowds that you're hanging out with, some of them are making you better, and that's great because they have good habits at home, they have good habits at homework, and some of those people you're hanging out with might be bringing you down. You don't know it. You know, when you're maybe 30 and 40, and you look back and say, hey, these guys were doing what they were doing, and I was being influenced with them, and they didn't have the same dreams I had. So it's so important that who you surround yourself with when you're in high school, you guys, is that you find people that are a little better than you, and they have good habits that you can look up to and say, I'm going to strive to be a little bit more, or I'm going to strive to work a little bit harder in the classroom, and surround yourself with people that help make you great. Those are things that combine as a group. So other things for me, everybody has their own philosophy of coaching, and just let's go right back to Greg. Greg, what's your philosophy in general for coaching a team and individuals?
Coaching a team or an individual, we're big on, like you just kind of touched on, we're big on character building. We have our 5 pillars that we work together to come up as a coaching staff, and we all had input into it. And so basically the 5 things that we want to make up our CHM football players are: we want to have a brotherhood, right? We talk about E plus R equals O, which is a very popular thing, and we try to coach our kids on how that formula works and what you can do to get the outcome you want. We talk about grit, having grit. and how you play and how you face life and how you're relentless and trying to achieve the goals that you want. We also talk to them about love, and I'm a big believer in that. Um, I tell the kids all the time I'm a hugger. If you need a hug and you're not having a great day and you need somebody to give you something extra, I'm the guy to come see. And then the last thing that we have is it's kind of a secret thing for us here at Sachem. It's called 9590. It's kind of a formula that we've come up with that in our mind equals um, relentless pursuit of of perfection. Well, we expect our kids to hustle in everything that we do. If it's take your shoes off and get on the wrestling mats to do our core workout, and then it's let's use the first guy back in the weight room, but your shoes have to be tied when you get by your rack. Little things like that. So that's kind of what we're doing. In individual kids, I think Coach mentioned before, you want those guys to be leaders in the school, leaders in the classroom. And when you're a football player and you're trying to achieve something, you have to realize that not everybody has the same goals and aspirations as you do. And my goal has been since the beginning of my coaching career is to try to help young men reach their goals, whether it's using football as a tool to get to an academic institution that's going to better them for the rest of their lives so that they can come back and be contributing members in our community.
That's great stuff, Coach. What about you?
Well, being a varsity assistant coach, I think it's very important that you follow the mold of what the head coach wants to do. And for us at Brighton, Coach Lena set it up under two things: being a high moral character type of person, and for us as a team, we call it the strength of the pack. We focus on team first with everything that we do, focusing on the character aspects of being a good student, being a good weight room partner, and a good athlete on and off the field. Focusing on offensive line play, I'm big into progressions. I get kids from 9th grade or 8th grade that may not know anything about offensive line.
Sure.
And I start first and foremost. All right, how do I get kids to get their weight into their feet? So I teach kids, imagine they have like a golf ball in your stomach, right? And you need to make straight lines from your stomach through your knees into your feet, creating force and pressure from the ground. So we'll spend 1 week, 2 weeks, just on base 2-point and 3-point stances and step progressions. I think it's really important that the players understand alignments. A lot of kids don't understand exactly where alignments are, and that could confuse them on different types of plays. So I'll spend time in the classroom. I'll usually on Wednesdays from March through June. I'll bring kids into a classroom after school, basic alignments of defenses and how our step progressions will change on the different alignments that we have. A big thing with me as well is choose your first step. I post online for kids to go look through what are the basic steps that I want you guys to use. Mm-hmm. When you see an alignment, when you know the technique, figure out your first step and then go and play fast. Yeah. So progression oriented, specifically with high school kids, because you'll have kids coming from 9th grade that they don't have much experience, knowledge of what they need to compete at a varsity level, and going from there. Dealing with how I coach my kids, I think it's important for athletes to know what makes a coach ticked off. And for me, I tell my students or my athletes, your focus and your effort and your intensity. I can't control those. I can't control your attitude. So if it's 90 degrees out on a summer day in the second practice of the day, and you come over to offensive line individual practice and you look down, I'm going to lose my mind on you. You can make mistakes as much as you want. You're in high school. Yeah. But the effort, the intensity are things that have to be internal. And I want the kids to understand that. So communication as well. I think it's important as a coach to be simple and concise with your kids. Yeah. They should know where you're coming from, what your beliefs are, what your fundamentals are as well.
Adam, what about you?
Yeah, I think it's just coming from a player's perspective. And, when you walk into a practice or you walk into the locker room, who is the tone setter? I was afforded the opportunity to play for 5 years in Baltimore and be 2 lockers away from Ray Lewis. And, he was a tone setter on the field, and he was a guy that you had to match the intensity. And, being a Hall of Fame player, he walked the walk and he talked the talk as well. But that was the standard of, as John Harbaugh reiterates to this day, is play like a Raven. There are things that you don't want to do. You don't want to go in the cold tub. You don't want to do contrast baths. You don't want to go get your ankles taped early because it's double sessions during the middle of the summer. But it's the veteran leadership that gets everybody through and creates a standard that then, as a coach, you can rely on to make sure that the team is following their P's and Q's.
Yeah, that's great stuff. You guys all touched on, again, things that it's hard to coach, right? A lot of that comes from within a player, right? You're talking about setting the tone and being willing to set that tone. So these guys that are listening and or that are watching, they all want to know what's the tip, what are the tricks to get to look in their direction. Well, some of it is what you're born with. How tall are you? What physical gifts did you come into the world with? Some of it is how you were trained. Some of it is how you're coached. But a lot of it is under your control. We're talking about effort. We're talking about attitude. We're talking about setting a tone in an NFL locker room. That same tone can be set in a team room in a high school.
Mm-hmm.
Are you the student that's setting a positive tone, an intense tone, and setting the expectation, or are you following and allowing the newer sort of culture? But I'm too cool to lead to allow that to take over. Like, I will say, athletes in this day, in this era, maybe compared to at least the era that I played in, it's not necessarily any better or worse, but it really stands out when you're a vocal leader that is you walk the walk and you talk the talk. They actually live what they're saying. When that happens, it's powerful when you're a peer. It just, because I don't think it happens as often maybe as it used to. That's so important. So the Power 50 showcase last year we hit some individual drills. You guys got the chance to meet people. The joy of that for me, and which continues even today in bringing on Coach Laurie, is the connection of all the different players and the coaches across the state, all with the same goal, right? We all come together with the same goal. We're all trying to help build better men. We're all trying to help our student athletes improve how they're perceived and how they get through life through the context of football. And recruiting happens to be one of those small pieces. It's not the only piece. But I thoroughly enjoyed the showcase last year, getting to see and meet people from downstate, from the Albany area, the Section 6 coaches I've never interacted with. It all came together for a common cause. And it's going to happen again on April 25th. And we this year to evaluate, prospects. We took coaches' nominations first. And we've had plenty of nominations just from, and then we've had to take the time to evaluate them. So the kids, the excitement portion, I just wanted to comment on that. But Coach Laurie, what are your thoughts, and how are you feeling about being a part of this year, and just in how are you? What's your take on the whole experience so far?
Well, when we first started talking about this last year, I thought it was one of the best things that could happen to our state. Give these young men an opportunity to showcase their skills so that people outside of this state, the state of New York, can see what our young men can do and what kind of talent we have here. I was excited about it last year. Unfortunately, didn't get a chance to make it up there. When you reached out to me this year to talk to me about coming up and working, I could care less if you wanted me to work with the kickers. I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to be involved in everything that's going on with this, because I truly believe that there's so many, undiscovered, or so much undiscovered talent in our state, that whatever we can do to help promote it is what needs to be done for the state of New York. Adam and I were talking before you guys got on about trying to, get the whole state of New York into a playoff system with a true state champion. And awesome. I'm 100% behind it, and I'm shaking the bushes down here on Long Island, trying to get people involved in everything. I'm calling coaches I know from Nassau, in the PSAL, telling them, hey, you got to send your kid to Mark and see if we can get an invite to the showcase. I'm just trying to do whatever I can, because I think this is going to be a phenomenal showcase this year. I know last year was great. I heard a lot of good things about it, but I'm just excited to be a part of it and give back to the state and our football players.
Appreciate that, Coach. Coach Weiner, year two for you.
Last year was such a great experience for me. Going from being a varsity coach to going to a statewide event was an outstanding experience. And thinking about today and being on this, I've been reflecting on what really makes a great lineman, and something that all these kids they possess it, like flexibility, intensity, but really need tools. Your need tools. Between your needs, what you need to do, and what you want to do. Everybody wants to be great, but these kids, because they're taking the time, they have those abilities, and they're putting themselves in front of the best in the state.
Yeah.
So they have that need and that desire to be great. They're not going to make excuses. They're going there to show their talents, and they have an internal desire. That's what's really fun for me. I mean, I know all their names, know all their techniques from their private high schools, but going and seeing them and seeing that intensity. I remember doing one-on-ones last year, and the kids were just jumping in, they were going, and they were excited to show their talents. And that's what's really fun for me. Because where we work, and we're working with kids from multiple levels, and we go in this situation, we're working with kids that want to show their talents, and that's why it's fun.
Adam's your second year. Obviously, you've been a part of bigger showcases, including the NFL Combine. Just what's your take on the excitement and your experience last year and going into 2020?
I think the greatest part about this is going to be the accountability across the state as you start to unite coaches that have varying levels of degrees of communications, different coaches, technique. That is the one thing that I see is needed is not more. It's a cohesive unit of, hey, coach down in Long Island, I know this guy, my guy was recruited here, and hey, by the way, there's this kid in upstate New York. And from my perspective, if we didn't go to the state finals, I would be a high school history teacher coaching a lot of football, and I would love it. But it was also, I had a great opportunity that I'm a lot like some of these New York kids where I was a big frame, but I was underdeveloped. And we were talking about Tom Heinzelman before, who's Section 2, and he was telling me as I saw him at Turning Stone, who was a Hudson Falls head coach, and then he was also Hudson Falls' athletic director. And he was telling me a story about how he asked Paul Pasqualoni and George DeLeon if I was going to make it. And, there was a lot of skepticism. I was a big kid. I was a mama's boy. I was a little bit soft when I went in there. And I'll wear those as a badge of honor. But the one thing that came out of it was a conversation, and he says, "Oh, he's not going to make it." And Heinzelman was kind of like, "Oh, you give him a little." He's like, "No, he's going to play in the NFL." So I hadn't stepped foot on the field, and Coach P knew and recognized what it was going to take to a man to get me ready. And believe me, there were days that I didn't want to show up to practice, but it was just the network of guys like Tom and Coach Munson down in when he was at Tottenville. These were some of these guys that Coach and I were talking about the Governor's Bowl before. New York versus New Jersey. This is the first time I ever passed that in my life. We were in a double wing in high school.
Yeah.
So to go down and go against a guy like Antonio Garay, who I ended up playing with at the Chargers, things like that. Will Smith, who's a Utica Proctor talented guy who since passed away, first round pick out of Ohio State, played in New Orleans. He was one of my roommates. So, it's getting just New York back together and get everybody as a cohesive unit and see if Freeport, Long Island is really the talent that they say they are, or, see if Canisius is the talent that they say that's out in Buffalo, and can they all come together and go play in the Dome for something that's extremely meaningful. So to me, that's why I'm excited, because I get to see guys from, on our list, you get to see a guy from Curtis High School. I saw Steve Gregory, who's now the assistant DB coach out in Detroit. He's a Curtis High School guy, and then Iona Prep. I don't know who their old line coach is.
Wow, they're good.
Hey, send them up this way when my kids are starting to play. Because at the age of 15, 16, my kids aren't going to listen to me. So we need a good line coach in order to coach them up. So that's the cool part is getting everybody in Albany excited about it, and let the egos down. I think a lot of this is posturing. Hey, I can do this for you. I can do that for you. At the end of the day, there were so many people that I didn't know had a part of me getting the opportunity, that every time I see them at different events, it's like, hey, coach, I really appreciate it. I ended up giving Tom a hug. So, and coach bringing in Kyle Flood up there, that was an awesome conversation. I picked his ears for about an hour and a half of, what's he doing with this? What's he doing with that? Can you do this? So, I'm not coaching currently, and I run a sports performance facility. I run multiple of them, but this is the love, this is the passion, and it gets the juices flowing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been fun. It was fun to watch you guys coach together last year. It's like, you put together the plans for months, and you've coached together before, and you show up and you walk on the field, and it's just boom, boom, boom. And I'm watching it going, man, it's like these guys have coached together for 10 years. So there's a camaraderie to it. They get the game, and I'm excited about that stuff. I'm one of those guys who just lives for those types of moments. Seeing the coaches take the field, seeing the prospects take the field. I know there's a build up to it. I know there's like social media, and I get it, and that's fun to a point. But as I said before, ultimately, I want to see these guys compete. I want to compete. I want to see how coachable they are. I want to see, when you guys are pushing them, and whatever drill it is, how do they respond? They're going to be under some stress. Offensive linemen of all people at a showcase are not in a great position because of the fact that we don't have full pads. We do have the game breaker soft shells on, but it's a pass rush. It's not like we can run block on one-on-one rep and then in a team and then switch to a pass set. So, I like to see how they operate under stress. It says a lot about the kid, and it shows me also I get to watch you guys work. So that's a fun thing for me. So going back to the prospects specifically, what are we looking for? I've touched on a couple of things. Greg, what are you looking for from the offensive line prospects or the prospects as a whole? They show up as soon as they walk through the doors. What are you looking for?
As soon as they walk through the door, well, I mean, the first thing everybody's going to look at is their size, and watching the film today and looking at the kids. It's one of the largest group of young men I've seen in a long time since I had a chance to coach college football. But then, and watching their films, the things I notice a lot about them is a lot of, I call them knee benders, right? A lot of flexibility in the bottom half of their body. A lot of them have hip flexibility, and that's something that some of them need probably, a little bit of work with at hip flexibility. The other thing I look for is when there is contact, do their hips deliver their hands, or are they just using their hands? And I see a lot of guys with their hips delivering the hands for the collision in the block. And then there's a few guys, especially for their size, that run really, really well for big men. That they can get out and pull, and they can turn sharp corners, and they can do things like that. A lot. That's some of the things that I'm always looking for, because the game has become where you're gonna have a down scheme and a counter scheme coming back the other way, and you can't. I don't like the flip flop linemen or anything like that. I got to find guys that can do all those skills and develop those skills in our linemen, so that we don't have to tip our hat to anybody. But in watching the films of the young men that are coming up, I can't wait to see this in person.
That's awesome. Coach Weimer, what about you?
Yeah, a lot of it's the same. I was watching film today, and a lot of these guys, they all share one thing, and they're all nasty.
Yeah.
They all get after it. They want to destroy people. I mean, the best linemen out there, they want to plant people in the ground and try to break their ribs. It's what they want to do.
Yeah.
And that's what I see with a lot of these guys. From putting them on film, doing one-on-ones, people are going to want to see how fast their feet move. People are going to want to see how well they punch. Are they creating force from the ground, through their knees, through their hips, through their hands, and maintaining that guy in front of them? How quick are their steps? Are they taking big lunges and steps? Are their feet firing fast with great tempo? Sure. Those are the things that we're going to want to see, and we'll coach them up as we're going through the process. But again, these guys, I mean, I took notes down. I mean, not every one of them aggressive, nasty. Yeah. They want to compete. So I have a feeling it's going to be a very high intense environment where these guys are really going to get after it.
How about you?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a situation where I think it's a Mike Tyson quote: "Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth." And honestly, there might be some hands up near the face. How do you respond to it? It was exciting because you had a kid like Nate King show up last year. He was a young guy. Nobody really knew anything about him. Yeah. And I think he laid down a 4.8, 4.9, which turned a lot of heads. And I know there were a couple college coaches there because of their children. They're watching their boys play. So I know that he went on the radar of a few schools in that capacity. They got a guy like Armand Bethea who, when I watch him, he reminds me of, I played with Orlando Brown Sr., who they called Zeus, and I know Orlando Brown Jr. very well. And he is just that big, physical,
Yeah.
6'6",
Mm-hmm.
330. I think that's a lie, but he's a marksman who can move. And that's the thing is, like, you get to see some upfront and physical big boys who can move around the field. And then you get to see, guys that are able to compete. And, the one that I'm excited to see is Rowan McGuinn, who is reminiscent of a kid who is another Irondequoit kid, Regan Craig, who's down at Stony Brook. So if he can follow in that type of footsteps, it'll be really interesting to watch them, develop overall. And those are just a few names. I think as we talk about this, is going to be 10 to 14 guys that, with 3 coaches, there's going to be a lot of fundamentals, techniques, but then it's also going to be some of the mental things. What are you looking at this point? Hey, your body's turned in this way. There are a couple guys who look extremely good in the run game, but they give up a short corner and they get walked back into the quarterback quick. How do we watch film, make sure that we have a plan for that right away? Because I'll tell you one thing, in the state of New York, yes, and then when you start to get into Staten Island, New York City, there's some quality pass rushers that some of these guys are going to have to face, and it's the first time you might have to face, a kid that's a legit 4, 5, 6 coming off the edge. Believe me, I got the moniker turnstile terrier in one practice because I just kept getting up sack after sack after sack. Fast forward a few years, we found out it was Dwight Freeney. I was okay with giving up those sacks. It's been a heck of a lot better in a short window of time.
So, speaking of that, you guys touched on a lot of different things, but you guys talked about feet and athleticism, and some of you guys talked about aggression. When we, sort of set our standards for who are we looking for, the first thing we were looking for is how aggressive they were. That's number one. Can they, do they want to play the game of football in the trenches the way it's meant to be played, through the whistle, to the point where you're like, okay, this is the guy I want on my team. This is the guy I want in my locker room, in my huddle. That was requisite. Item number 2 was, do they move more like a tight end than an offensive lineman, if you can get in there? And just a quick story about that. In 2018, it would have been the spring of 2018, I brought Fairport football to Adam. It was a team workout. It was really just to, get them there and go through a workout. Really, a lot of the conditioning, the running and the sprinting. I wanted to see, what we could do with powertrain. Adam, are you 6'8"? I think he's 6'8", but
yeah,
the guy we had at Fairport at the time, and he started demoing this sprint, stop, change direction movement, and he moved in my running backs. Right? All the kids on my team turned around and looked at me and go, "Coach," I said, "Yeah." So, here's a guy who played in the NFL. He had 27 offers out of high school, and he's not just a big guy. He's a guy that could move. He had good bend, good ankle flexibility, mobility. You could see it. You could see the way he was demoing it at powertrain. So my point being is that you can't just be a big, strong guy and be able to handle a good speed rusher or pass rusher. You've got to work on so much more than just the squat and the bench.
Yep.
And there are still out there that sort of overemphasize the brawn and not enough of, mobility piece, because the mobility piece is going to help you move quicker, right? You can't just say, well, let's do some speed ladders and jump rope. Like, there's got to be other things that are in that. But for that, I look for who sort of moves like a tight end and play lineman. Mike Nowitzki from Victor is a great example. Played the position of tight end. It was a very good one. Another aggressive dude, uses his hands. I mean, that he had more pancake blocks, that kid, in Victor than I've seen in several years upstate. And Buffalo put him in center. He's starting. Is he starting as a freshman right now? Or last year got some playing time. But the kind of guys for me, I personally was, asking our evaluators to really look for who can really move and who's got those requisite traits, to do what they need to do. Um, let's dive into some of these prospects, but we've got some of the stood out to me like right out of the gate. We sent some of this tape, by the way. I know you guys have seen the tape. We sent some of this tape to Paul Alexander, who's used to coach for the Bengals, the Cowboys, and he is all over the internet now. I think when he first got out of the NFL, he was kind of quiet. All of a sudden, he's really found his way, and so some tape and his favorite, I think his best evaluation and my favorite. I shouldn't say it's a bad word, but the guy to me that has both of those traits that maybe doesn't come from the biggest school is Daniel Pirro. Unfortunately, Daniel hasn't officially accepted his invite yet, so he's still on the bubble. He's got about a week or two before he accepts it, but on tape he moves really well. Great pad level leverage. Uses his hips. He's violent with his hands, and it looks like he has that mobility and flexibility. Who in your mind, guys, and you don't have to pick every guy, but Greg, who stood out on tape when you were watching?
I'm not sure I'll be able to pronounce their names, but the young man from Curtis High School, last name Norwa.
Fast.
Right?
Yeah.
I just, the way that young man pulled and delivered and came there with the intention of trying to knock the defensive end off to the sideline. That was one of the things. And then the other kid that really stuck out to me was, and I think Coach mentioned him earlier, Nate King from New Rochelle. To me, he was one of the more physical finishers, and he used his hands and his eyes really well. And one of the things I always talk to our guys about is how well do you play with your eyes? Because there's a lot of combo stuff, and a lot of guys are great coming off the ball, getting into contact and moving people, but they never see the second move that they're going to have to make. And I thought he did a pretty good job of that. And then, and Coach mentioned earlier before, the two young men from Iona Prep, holy crud. Those guys, wow.
Yeah.
And Coach mentioned it earlier. The one thing that kept popping up as I'm watching film and taking my notes, it was beast, physical, finisher. That's what I'm seeing in all these kids.
That's awesome. Coach Weimer, what about you?
Armin Bethea. I mean, watching this kid, he's a monster.
Yeah.
He's a monster in size. I'm really looking forward to seeing his feet when we do pass pro.
Yeah.
Because he had a lot of clips where he's just dominating people, but when you see him in pass pro, you saw it. You saw those feet moving and firing. So I'm really looking forward to seeing him in pass pro. Kevin Rode, this kid as well. I saw a lot of wow factor in him, his explosion off the ball. And again, fast feet tempo. I think that's the biggest thing people are going to want to see. How well do their knees bend? What's their ankle flex, and how fast those feet are moving? And that kid really, really has it. I'm looking forward to that.
Coach Alexander also noted that he liked Rode from Iona Prep. Coach Adam Terry, how about you?
Yeah, I think it's Curtis High School. The guy that pops out to me is Asaji Norua. If I butchered your name, it's okay.
We'll figure it out at the showcase.
I think the thing is he's an undersized guy. He moves extremely well. To me, he's reminiscent of one of my good friends who came out of Oklahoma, Chris Chester. A little bit undersized, could play tight end if he needed to. Very similar to like a Mike Nowitzki, where Mike was playing tight end down at Victor. And, this kid's a center to me. You bump him in, you have him play center. He moves extremely well. He can get out in space. It looked as though he was making the right, it's kind of hard when you're grading an old lineman and looking at what they're doing, because you have a general idea of the schematic, but you don't know it 100%. So I liked what he was able to do. And, I'm excited to see Bethea as well, because I think he's going to be on a lot of people's radar. Definitely a Syracuse type guy, Rutgers type guy. He's going to get those pretty fast. If not, I believe he already has them, those type of offers. So, big guy that can move around. Can he be a dancing bear? And that's really what everybody would like to see is a guy with some size, move around. And then, I think it's coming back to Rowan McGuinn, who in all essence, is a big-bodied guy, can move well, but can he make that next step? And with all of these guys, nobody's a finished product. There's a lot of time and effort that's necessary, and from my perspective, it's just a short duration that if we can kind of solidify and reiterate what is being told to them. If it's the same type of message, then they're getting the right message. If it's a completely different message, then they have to go back and look at themselves a little bit more to say, hey, am I doing the right things? Am I in the weight room? Are my grades good enough? And from what I see on this, everybody's grades are pretty good, and then it's going to be contingent upon doing the SAT and getting through the NCAA clearinghouse to really showcase the academics.
Interesting point about Osage, guys. So the way we found him was about a week ago, and last year's Power 50. If you guys remember, Onarje Bone Meter was his name, or Bond Meter. He was that 5'11", 225-pound D lineman that was a pretty good, very quick first step. So believe it or not, Onarje reached out to us on Twitter and said, "Hey, I went up with this guy one-on-one, and he was the best O-lineman I went up against in my career, and he played against them." And here's a player who was in our showcase last year, had no reason to do this whatsoever, other than the fact that he respects the kid, one of his opponents. He tweets us, or he gets a hold of us. We then have to get a hold of the head coach of Curtis, obviously, and I just was blown away by that, in a positive way. I think that says a lot about our culture as a state, and I think it says a lot about how we look after each other. We're all trying to help one another get to that next step. So that's interesting. Other guys on the list. We've got Joe Cruz. We've got Scott Becker's a lacrosse player from Iona Prep. He's a little younger, but he's got pretty good feet too. Yeah. He moves pretty well. He's Kevin Rowe, but maybe gonna be. He loved him. Brian Hawkins saw him live, and he thought Scott Becker stood out up front. So again, another Iona Prep kid, which is unbelievable. Michael Petrell, another Iona Prep kid. Corey plays center. Mm-hmm. And he also plays defensive line, which the last point we're going to make before we sort of sign off here is that we bring in guys that are offensive linemen. Some of them are defensive linemen that play some offensive line in high school. The most challenging thing for us as evaluators is decide how to showcase, if you will, these guys sort of two-way players. So this year we will have not necessarily a ton of these guys, but we will have some guys that play outside linebacker that will spend time getting some edge rush one-on-ones, or guys that play, outside linebacker that go from edge rush one-on-ones to actually covering somebody out in the flat or what have you. So, but, I'm curious. Corey Stevenson's a guy who he played nose guard, and he could displace a center, 2 or 3 yards into the backfield almost on every play. I mean, it was spectacular for me to see the power that he was using as a D lineman. And as a center himself, he was equally powerful at displacing the defensive line. So I'm curious to see how he shows what he does to you guys. He's a big body kid. Points to be made last year, and I think this probably happens all over the country, but some of these guys see themselves as 6'5", 6'6", and then we were getting to the showcase and doing the actual heights and weights, and there were 3, 4, sometimes 5-inch differences in the height. Please, just be honest. I mean, it doesn't help you to do that. It really just wastes people's time. Just put your actual height and weight. It's fine. Put your actual GPA. That's the best thing, is to be honest that way. And I tell you who the dark horse is to me. He played for Spencerport, and I appreciate this because I believe he played in a similar offense in high school. But Marionetti, he actually went to the Elite New York State Showcase run by Dave Marine in December, and he had a frame that he could be a defensive lineman. I don't know where he's going to end up. I just know he's got a big body. He's like 6'3", 2 1/4. He moves like a basketball player. He's got a good explosion and power. He's raw as ever, but I'm curious what he's going to do and how he shows up, because at that particular December showcase, I thought, okay, here's a kid who nobody knows about. He's not on Twitter, but just that one evaluation, I thought, we're going to bring in a guy like that and just see what he can do. Plays for a great coach, really gritty guys over there in Spencerport. Just to close up tonight, I appreciate all the time you guys gave to this talk, and I appreciate obviously you guys being able to come to the showcase, coach up the kids. And I just I want to thank you again for tonight. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening, and we look forward to seeing you guys on our next episode. Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.